All right, so we are at the top of the hour. Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to SHRM Original Series, The Hybrid Workplace 2025, in partnership with Zimeo. A three-season series which has a host of great learning content in form of webcasts, podcasts, articles, etc. coming your way this year. I'm Neha Pant, part of the Knowledge and Advisory team at SHRM India, and I'm going to be your host for the next 60 minutes. We launched our first episode of the first season in January, which was called The Distributed Digital Workplace, if you attended that one. The rise of new organizational models is what we talked about. And today we are bringing to you episode 2 of season 1 of Hybrid Workplace 2025, called Managing and Inspiring Performance in the New World of Work. Now, I have some eminent guests with me here on the panel, but before I introduce them to you, I wanted to highlight a few things. This webcast will be recorded and available for viewing on our website. This will be available there. Your audio and video, of course, for participants is disabled since this is a webinar style format, but that shouldn't discourage you from participating in this conversation. We have that chat going. That's our primary mode of interaction. So ensure you share your insights with us, your comments, any questions. We are not reserving time for Q&A, so you can just type in your questions and we'll get to them as we go along. As we begin this conversation, let me introduce you to our panelists. And first up on our panel, we have Simin Askari, who's Vice President, Corporate Human Resources and Business Excellence at Dharampal Satyapal Limited. Now, she comes with 29 years of experience, is currently at the helm of packaging, agroforestry, and rubber. Most recent additions in the group's portfolio are confectionery and dairy. Simon leads the strategic HR for the group and is spearheading several new initiatives aimed at organizational capability building at pan-India level. She's recently been entrusted with heading the business excellence department and is also responsible for designing and establishing processes, policies across all businesses, streamlining them and standardizing them to bring about business transformation and improved efficiency. So she is the perfect person today to talk about performance management. In her career, she has also worked with organizations like HCL and Times of India. In her last assignment with the Apollo Group, she headed HR for Apollo International Limited, the diversified business of the parent company Apollo Tires. Simon, welcome. So good to have you with us, and you are on mute. So
Thank
yes.
you so much. Thank you, Neha. It's good to be on the panel with so many other experts. I really look forward to the interaction. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us. Next up, we have Mayank Kumar, who's the founder of Zimeo, one of India's fastest growing HRMS and employee experience platform. Zimeo is a cloud-based hire to retire solution that works with over 300 plus organizations and already has about 100,000 employees using their platform. Prior to Zimeo, Mayank has worked in some of the leading banks and NBFCs in product management capacity and launching products like UPI, FASTag, and a lot of other fintech solutions. Thanks for joining us, Mayank.
Well, thank you.
Wonderful. I hope you can hear me well.
I can.
Wonderful. Okay. All right. With that, I also want you to know our third panelist. We have Sonal Kapoor Sinha. She's head HR for Modern Foods. Now, Modern is an iconic brand that pioneered the concept of bread and literally created the bread category in India. Launched in 1965 as Modern Bakeries India Limited, the company was rechristened Modern Foods India Limited in 1982. Now, Modern Foods was the first company to be privatized by the government of India in 2000, and then it was sold to HUL. In April 2016, Modern changed hands again, this time Everstone Capital. Today, the company is called Modern Foods Enterprises Private Limited and is 100% owned. It's actually 100% owned by Everstone Capital. Right now, it's an all-new avatar. The relaunch of Modern Foods has been crafted with intensive efforts, with significant investments in manufacturing, R&D, and Modern's new innovation hub in Chennai, as well through efforts on consumer insights, strategy, and design. Now, Sonal is, of course, at the helm of HR affairs here. She comes with 15 years of multifaceted experience in areas including HR business partnering, industrial relations, people development, performance management and rewards, HR systems analytics, and has also worked in companies like Dabur Pharma, Metro Cash and Carry, and Goodyear in the past. Welcome, Sonal. Great to have you here with us.
Thank you so much, Neha. I think our panel talks of being hybrid as good as anything else. So look forward to a very, very meaty discussion.
Yes, and this is, I think, in a long time that we have a representation from, Indian companies and a different sector altogether. Usually, we have, had people who are representing IT and ITS, and we are trying to, bring in that variation today. So we are hoping that we are going to get multiple insights and perspectives from you all. Of course, today's talk is about performance management, as we are also, entering into the, performance appraisal period. But before we get started and I ask you about what's happening in your respective organizations, I also wanted to check with our participants, what's happening with them, right? So let me at this point quickly bring up my screen, and I want to quickly ask our participants, what is performance management really looking like in their organizations? So just allow me a moment here. Okay, I hope you're all able to see my Menti screen. This, I'm sure you know the drill by now. If you could use a separate browser window or a browser on your mobile device, go to menti.com. You have the website address on top of the screen. Use the code 1084614 and do something very simple. Just in one word, describe your performance management system. So menti.com is what you need to type, and use the code 1084614. All right, we have our first word there. Okay, outdated, differentiation, reactive, painful. Oh yes, we feel your pain. Pay for performance, ongoing feedback. All right, value-based. Does not match year end. Sorry, I can't read that fully. Okay. Ongoing feedback, agile, reactive. Tell us more as we get started on this conversation. Oh, look at that, Mayank. Simin, Sonal, painful is sitting right in the center. Outdated and painful. Look at that. I think it's about time we have a conversation about our existing performance management systems, right? So yes, that's exactly we hope to do today. And the way we have designed this panel, we have somebody who can tell you about what technology to choose, what solutions to really look at, and we have people who are actually dealing with this day in and day out. So we'll quickly understand from them what is it looking like for their organizations. And now that you're telling us, for some of you, there is of course continuous feedback. We are looking at continuous dialogues, pulse of the employees, but for some, it may not be as evolved, right? I'll give you a quick 30 seconds to give us more words, and then we'll quickly see what all sectors are you representing today? So with what all representation, what all organizations are you coming from? All right, so now continuous feedback is coming in the center. On that note, let me quickly move ahead and tell us which sector does your organization represent? And I've tried to capture as many sectors as I can. If I've still managed to miss some, please vote for others. But yeah, let's see what is the split really looking like. Okay, I guess we get the drift. And on that note, let's get started. And I want to come to you, Simin, first. You saw what was happening on the screen. You saw what people are saying about their performance management systems. And you also saw the sectoral representation that we have. And in some ways, I think we had anticipated. So tell us, in this new hybrid, work route, where are you in your journey? And, what is performance management really looking like for you?
Well, I don't think what the audience had stated is completely off. I mean, it's kind of very relatable, and somewhere, it's kind of touching also. No matter how hard we try as HR professionals to make sure that things go better, but performance management remains, I would say, is somewhat of a touchy subject, because there will always be a certain percentage which feel that it's really not up there, and we are really not doing justice to the PMS in the organization. So, having said that, I think the time has come when, engagement, productivity, and learning as something which is going to be driving the organization, and therefore performance management, or the way it is done, it needs to sort of evolve as well. Obviously, continuous feedback and continuous, sort of communication, constant communication is something which is required. But then in our hearts, we know that, no matter how much we say continuous feedback, the very mechanism of how feedback is given, I don't think a lot of managers, including HR, really know how to give effective feedback. So that is, I think, something which is of a concern for every organization when it comes, because we tend to lose good performers if we are not doing a justice in terms of a PMS, proper PMS. Uh, Going forward, I mean, the way the world has changed now with, the gig workers, with the flexi working, with remote working, it's all the more important that we have a mechanism of appraising a performance of an employee, which is based on maybe the ultimate objectives, rather than the little tasks that we have assigned them. Ultimately, what is it that our goal is? And so it needs to sort of be twisted on its head a bit, and it needs to be a little more evolved than what it is today. So I think going forward, it needs to really change, if not already. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I'm sure Sonal resonates with that. And Sonal, wanted to check with you. I mean, what is it really looking like at Modern Foods? Maybe one word that you may want to describe your performance management system as, if you'd like to.
Well, since you're asking me, I mean, maybe if someone else in the organization would have worded it differently. For me, it's evolving. It really is. I think these months have just tested us, honestly, from a knowledge to an implementation level, everything about PMS as far as HR is concerned. Going back to your original question on, how we are aligning to the hybrid work model. One reality by that we had during these times, I think things which we believed could not be done. For example, if somebody would have asked me about a year back, can you be in HR and work from home? I would have never imagined. I mean, for me, FaceTime was probably the primary element of being in this particular function. But we, in organizations, ran, and people did effectively deliver. In fact, we've had one of very, very different years in our in our history. So yes, you see, since there is reality, employees are more aware. Things are possible. In these many months, we've also made ourselves more agile in terms of giving maybe structures, decision making delegations, probably tweaking those culture tenets to be able to allow greater flexibility. The definition of the word fairness itself has undergone a massive change. We felt same to everyone at the same level was defining fairness, and then suddenly you realize, no, you have to look at equality and equity very differently. So I guess all of that goes into the definition of this hybrid work model. And what we would do in the coming months, again, I think even all of us will really just see how it's unfolding. The vaccinations are still coming in. People are still coming out of their fear syndrome. So So everyone is, reacting differently to reopening the office and returning to work. So with that, I guess how this entire performance piece sits in is that we have to understand the roles of various stakeholders in this entire process. To me, it has always remained goal versus feedback. I think it's performances systems could be to any time frame, to any constraints. But if the goals are agile and the feedback is continuous, any PMS model could be successful. So, I mean, I will probably rest at this time there and see how the discussion evolves. But that's been my fort to hold here.
Sure. Thanks. Thanks for that, Sonal. And Mayank, now I want to come to you. We will perhaps get Sonal and Simin to tell us a little more about, what is this agile goal setting really looking like for them. But I know you've been on the solution side and you've been consulting with so many organizations. So, give us a sense. Is it really evolving for everyone? And when we say, continuous performance management, continuous feedback, is it something which, is more prevalent in ITS sort of a sector? So if you could give us like a sense of where the whole performance management system
Well,
has.
I mean, dozens of implementations that we have undertaken. I mean, the experience goes very varied. But the stepping stone is that I want to resonate the same thought that everyone is saying, that it's quite outdated. Though continuous feedback is the engine to go to, but that's not what sets the goals, KPIs for an organization, right? So I mean, so I don't know how many people know this, but there's a Gartner study that says that 6% of the entire workforce that was surveyed said that their performance management system is actually capturing what is to be captured, the performance of the individual as well as the company, while the 94% are still dubious about even the accuracy of a PMS in the organization. But you will see the trend, right? Everyone now moving to a OKR, from a balanced scorecard to even more agile systems also, right? I think this is the way to go forward. While we were implementing this a year back, but with COVID and all, I think this has caught pace like anything. I mean, companies who are implementing it fast have actually seen results. So I'm a big, I'm a promoter of agile, and that's the one word I would choose for my organization as well. That we are even reinventing how OKRs are implemented, right? So they're so in India. I mean, because of the historic or empirical the lineage of how the PMS was undertaken versus how newer systems are being implemented, there's a lot of carry forward, and it's exactly not how as agile, but everyone is every day moving towards more agile, and I think that's a phenomenal way to look at it.
Sure, Mayank, at this point, I also want, and there's this comment that's come up, Aman saying a lot of modern organizations are launching OKR and contextualizing it in line with virtual world and driving cultural transformation. I wanted to sort of request you to also break it down a little bit for us. I mean, yes, we've heard about OKRs. Some of us may know it really well, but really, how does it differ from a conventional goal setting process? And, is this a new fad that now everyone's catching on to?
No, so I'll tell you why it is not a fad. And I'll go back to some studies like, I don't know how many people know that Fortune 500 in 1955 to Fortune 500 has only less than 10% companies. Now, these are the companies who have actually brought innovation in their culture. And that could have only happened through training and a lot of these performance, newer engines and newer methodologies that they have picked. So 1999, I mean, let's say one company that has been there entirety of this was Adobe, right? Adobe implemented OKRs like, while ago when people were still trying it out. But it's still on the innovation front, right? And 78%, according to the internal survey they did, said that they're now feeling a better, acceptance by the management on how they should be rated, right? So some systems also are, so generally PMSs are supposed to be employee driven, but there are certain systems which are even employee friendly like this. Best example is Google. So I don't know, people think that OKRs were was pioneered by Google, but actually it was Intel who invented OKRs, and Google invested in it from 40 employees to being the most innovative company at like 100,000 employees. I think this was a go-to factor. Now I'll give you exactly how it breaks down to. See, generally, if you look at balanced scorecard or maybe any other methodologies like Hosen, or maybe OGSM, right? The problem is they work in isolation. So you will work certain goals for learning and development, financial solutions, and over a period of 2-3 years, you evaluate it. Now, I'm saying 2-3 years. Even a yearly appraisal is losing the charm. Why? Because it's a fast-moving world, right? Startups are there to take out traditional businesses. Fintechs there to take out BFSI, and product SaaS companies taking over IT service companies. The objectives change every quarter, right? If you're having a yearly or maybe a 2 yearly KPIs and measuring them, you have lost the game. Agile is very simple. OKRs is nothing. I mean, it's the same key result, but the objective starts at the corporate level. So you corporate, you say that, we want to grow at 300% and we're going to achieve a sales target or something, right? It brings down to different functions. Like say, for us, it's an international business and an India business. We say that in India, we want to do some 100 million ARR, and it brings down to somebody else. It further divides to further team. So what I'm trying to say is from the top to the bottom, everyone is thinking in the same line. Tell me why a company will not grow or excel or perform better if everyone is thinking on the same line. And I think OKRs is just the phenomenal. I mean, it's the way to go forward to. And we have implemented it in our organizations. We are implementing it many organizations, and we have seen success. Now, I won't discount other facts because something, say a manufacturing customer, right? For them to get everyone to mark their task daily and to update it daily, it takes time, right? Let's understand it. And India, it's a very hybrid mix of from a traditional to a very real-time agile functions. And let's discount OKR, let's say even OGSM. Let's say even to this journey, some people would be at 98%, some would be at 50%. But the task is to move toward the better one, because the more aligned company goals and individual goals are, the better it will move. And I'm saying, rather than looking at yearly, look at quarterly. And I don't know, I mean, Google looks at daily. I mean, you are looking at feedback at a daily level. That is as phenomenal as it can get. And that is something I, as an organization, also want to aspire. Hope that answers on how the OKR structures and
it
how
does, and we see the excitement as well, and your passion for this sort of goal setting process. And I wanted to come to Simin at this point. Simin, have you had a tryst with OKRs yet? What does it look like for a group like yours?
So I would not term it the way Mayank so passionately put, but yes, we do have a mechanism where we are giving feedback or monitoring performance on a continual, almost day-to-day basis, or at least a group of our people, right? And of course, technology has helped us. I mean, the entire thing has been possible only because we have enabled AI and ML, driven technology, especially for the Salesforce, where we do have a mechanism of even enhancing performance by giving smaller nudges, as I was discussing earlier with you the other day. The mechanism is of giving little pieces of motivation which are customized to an individual, and figuring out what motivates that person individually, and if it is money that is driving him, if it is the position that drives him, is it competition, is it peer rating, what is it that drives the person to be able to perform better and sell more, or to be able to achieve their targets better. And this entire platform has a mechanism where feedback is given almost continuously. The person is able to, it's a very transparent, I would say, transparency of goals, transparency of the appropriate reward mechanism that is built accordingly. And therefore, while I may not term it as a complete OKR sort of a thing, but yes, I think it's a evolved way of performance management, and this is working pretty well in our organization. We have actually seen phenomenal growth in performance because of this technology-driven platform that we are using now. So yes, for certain people, and of course now, because there's a lot of people who have been working remotely. And as Sonal rightly put, before this pandemic, there were so many things, simple things like having virtual interviews, for example, were almost impossible for an organization like ours, where everybody would say, unless you bring somebody in the office, we really don't know what they are like, and things like that. Now the entire world has moved virtual. I mean, all my interviews, everything is happening online now. The entire discussion is now over a virtual platform. So it's even more important in such a scenario that we keep our employees motivated and their performance to be optimal and their performance to be managed constantly. We can no longer actually rely on a yearly PMS system. It needs to be continuous. It may not be daily, but definitely it needs to be at least quarterly, if not uh, earlier than that.
Yeah.
So setting clear goals, monitoring it, setting clear objectives in mind, not monitoring the task but the actual outcomes is what we are now sort of shifted to now. Yeah.
Sure. Okay, so I think Simin is also reinforcing the thoughts that yes, OKRs are a way to go. Sonal, wanted to understand from you, where are you in your journey? What is it looking like for modern food?
So thanks, Avanya. So we actually implemented OKRs in 2019 for a very different reason. And in my response, I will try and address Manisha's and Aman's comments while Aman is directed to Mayank, but I'll just see if I can do some justice to it. So to me, again, OKR is a theory and a process which is open to interpretation. So this is how I interpreted it for the organization, that we will first of all, stop looking at the goals. Of course, the organization will always look at a strategy which is 3 year, 5 year, any window that we may want to take in. But as far as my immediate the difference that I can make in a particular time period, instead of looking at it annually, I'm going to look at it for a quarter. The first interpretation we made was that each of our goals, including the CEOs, to at least at the junior executive level, will be looked at a quarter, split. What further that we did from the goals is that from the goals there were weekly timelines that we insisted in the initial phase to have the employees make for themselves, and also then task it down to the daily level. Now, what happened, especially Manisha, if you're hearing me, this was not to monitor their performance. It was to let them feel that if I've clicked the button right now on my laptop, which particular goal of the organization have I been able to impact right now? So every task that I do on a daily basis, OKRs give employees a view on what they are tinkering at an organizational level. Now, the question is, why did we in 2019 thought of this, and what made us go there is, like thankfully you mentioned the history of modern. So we being a P firm, invested organization, it meant that there was a lot that we had to cover in a year's time frame. So every time that I would sit across and say, hey, listen, give me your goals, I realized that people were struggling to give me annual goals. The most important thing, they could only view business, and I'm not meaning the leadership team, I'm saying generally speaking, people could only view what they had to do for the next 3 months, because they would say, suddenly everything's going to change. The our volumes are going to go up exponentially. So what we realized was, brilliant, let's not push them to make annual goals. Let's take a model which looks at goal on a quarter basis, allow them to tweak it at the end of the quarter, and also can in their feedback at that level. So what it helped us to, for example, when we closed 2019, was people were more in sync with their feedback, because they knew it on a if not a weekly basis, if everybody didn't do perfect implementation, which it never happens in the first year, at least on a quarterly basis, they knew what they were doing and what course correction was required.
Yeah.
So it's honestly not the easiest implementation, because it's a lot of mind shift that needs to be done. People have to view feedbacks, have to be sought by an individual and not to be given by the manager always.
Right.
It became more like, I'm going to demand feedback rather than I'm going to wait for it. So that's the massive shift that OKRs did to people.
True.
We're still probably not even 40% home on that. One of the biggest failures that I did for myself was in never investing in technology for that, which is something that I plan to do this year. But I think something like an OKR definitely needs technology. The other key benefit, which I think Balance Scorecard earlier tried to address, was shared goals, which OKR does seamlessly. Because whatever you're doing has to somewhere roll up into somebody else's OKR. So everything that you do is a collaboration, which is also a culture tenet for us in the organization. So which means that it gives agile goals, which helps us tremendously in this entire pandemic, because things were changing month on month. So the agility of goals helped us in the past year people's openness to feedback and being able to course correct without worrying about that rating that may impact their appraisals, because there's no change happening at every quarter, right? So the feedback were more open. The conversations were nothing to do with their ratings and promotions, etc., etc. So it just gave it a more open-ended conversation. So that's where we are on the OKR journey, and I vehemently recommend it. Not, I'm saying it's not OKR what is important. It's the agility of goals, and like I was mentioning, the continuum of feedback, and to be able to do it in an open, mindset, disconnected to the entire bell curve rating, appraisals, and increments. I think that's where we should place the entire PMS piece.
True, no, absolutely. And one thing that stood out for me was also the fact that how technology enables that a lot better, right? And Mayank, now I want to come to you, and I'm also recalling my days, from Adobe, because I used to be part of the organization. I worked there for about 5 years, and I was there at the time when the ratings were being thrown away, and OKRs were being implemented, and back then. There wasn't a technology solution that did this. It's been 3 years that I've moved out of the organization. I'm not sure if there's a new tool that they have adopted, but for about 2 years, the whole exercise of setting goals and really reviewing performance on a quarterly basis, which is more continuous feedback sort of a thing, happened without a technology infrastructure. So do you think that is still doable?
So I also want to answer some of the questions while answering that, including, is it a micromanagement thing? See, I think, and I'm just going to put a colloquially to it, which is like in India, when people do not know, parents suggest that do engineering, right? So if the guy knows that he has to do engineering, 90% of it will eventually reach there. Now, the thing is, if you want to really have a robust performance management system, because you're having an engine to reach to certain goal as an organization, right? Absence of anything is any which way is nothing, right? So when people put systems in place, the idea is to get people to think on objective KRAs. As Sonal said, that the biggest problem we face when we implement is that people do not know what their objectives are. So KRAs, KPIs are as qualitative in India. It's sometimes even daunting to work through every team to figure out what their objective KRAs is. And I think so somebody exactly asked, I think it was Aman, right? And I'll answer, Neha, your question after that. Is that see, for even internal my organization, we now know that we have to hire certain business folks, right? SDRs, right? But then to have an agenda based, like this week I'm going to hire 2 people, all right, we will conduct 16 interviews at least this week, or at least 50 people should give assessment test. That is the objective part of it. Of course, you're going to hire, and that is the KPI of a talent acquisition person. But when you put objectivity to it, you're far closer to the goal, and people can see the end result. That, if I hire 2 people, then the sales numbers that we have projected will be impacted, because of the new sales will have their own targets. And many people are still of the thought that it's very micromanaged thing. It's not. Why? Because we bring engine to everything. So it's just not a manual feedback that everyone is giving, that I'm going to rate you 4 on every task. How we have plugged in it is that if you have got a sales number, and let's say every week you're supposed to get a sales number, it's connected to our HubSpot, which means the numbers automatically get furnished. So if you are hired for a role, whatever your JD says, like if you're a content person, you have to publish 2 blogs. And if you connect it to your SEMrush or any tool, as I said, the technology has a play in it. So even if you look all the best of the OKR softwares in the world, they have very defined integration. So from Google, Sheets to maybe even a HubSpot, SEMrush, you name the tool. I mean, Salesforce, right? So everything is quantifiable, and that's the best part of OKR. And now to answer your question, why it became a success was, at least people were thinking objectively. As I said, 90% of the job is to get people to have objective targets. If that is there, I think, system or no system, you get it. Systems makes it easy. As I said, like my team does not have to report to me that, these tasks are done. So at the end of the day, if I can just open my HubSpot, I can see through the notes, it's all connected. So I can see that what all tasks were done. So there's a task engine, you can actually see all these pre-filled. And as I'm saying that, future is about embedded systems, which means that, if you're hiring, say, a talent acquisition person for HR, right? They will be, of course, using ATS, right? So if you look at, something like a very HRMS systems, they have got their acquisition systems in place, the field acquisition numbers, You even have got your LMS, how many assessments were undertaken, how many trainings conducted. So more and more, it's very quantifiable. Is where I'm coming to. So the objective part of the OKR is the essence of the whole piece. Yeah, hope that answers many of your questions.
Yes, yes, it does. And yeah, I think initially we did experience all of that challenge. And I think perhaps doing it without technology helped sort of build that, you know, familiarity and comfort. And then when you put systems in place, people take to them a little bit easier. I think that may have been the, the thinking. But Simin, I wanted to come to you and I want to shift gears from goal setting a little bit now and come to the ratings versus, rating less, performance management system. Now, if we are saying OKRs is the way to go when it comes to goal setting, what is your sense in terms of tying it to the ratings or not?
See, one of the objectives of the performance appraisal process is also linking it to the reward mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if the rewards are linked to something which is on a continuous basis, perhaps you may want to do away with ratings.
Mm-hmm.
But in organizations which are, like ours, okay, so where there's so much of diversity in terms of the kind of businesses we are in, the kind of generations, are almost 5 generations work side by side. It becomes a bit difficult for you to implement a lot of newer initiatives. And while it's easier to say that it's a ratingless organization, ultimately there is some form of rating. There will be some form of comparison happening. There will be some way a bell curve is going to be formed. I mean, whether you want to name it as such or you don't, ultimately there will be. So, frankly, in my opinion, it may be possible in certain organizations, while in others, I don't think we really can do away with completely with being a ratingless sort of a appraisal process.
Mm-hmm.
We do need it, of course. We want appraisal happening, not simply because at the end of the year there will be certain salary increases, but also because ultimately performance of individuals impact the performance of an organization, and to reach that bigger goal, it needs to be monitored. And how effectively are we monitoring it, how constantly are we monitoring is how well the organization is going to be ultimately performing. So I think frankly it is, if you ask me personally, I think it's here to stay. I don't think it's really going away.
Okay.
I
Do
don't.
you see a combination, a hybrid approach,
Yeah, it's a hybrid sort of
and
a thing.
less going together?
It's a hybrid kind of a thing that is going to go on. I mean, with the current scenario, and with actually the COVID actually being the catalyst in bringing about a lot of change, which a lot of organizations were earlier struggling with, I think now it is more important than ever to have clearer objectives, to be open and transparent, to have clear goals, and ultimately to be having a continual feedback mechanism and rewarding good performance.
Sure. Thank you. And Sonal, while you also share, that from your organizational context and perhaps, where you think this process should go. Also, to that point, if you could address what Satyanarayan's asking, should annual performance appraisals be linked or delinked with annual salary increase? So while you answer rating versus rating less, do take a shot at that too.
Interesting. Yeah, I read that question. And I somehow feel either the audience is incepting us or we are incepting them. I'm not too sure. We're somehow going very much in sync. So it's brilliant. Okay. So rating versus rating less. So what I've seen is the only thing that one could have done away with really was a forced bell curve. And let me just go to, how we operate as a society at large. And I think that just sits in with the organizations. There is a certain pool of money and it needs to be divided amongst people. And that pool of money could either, for example, when the government looks at it, it has to either look at the social strata or the economic strata, or, they also have to have some filters, and then they kind of do a reverse rank and then start distributing them. Or, there could be any such parameters. Now, why these forced bell curves ever emerged, I don't think it was so much about just the money. It was also about, this entire system of exiting the low performers and, kind of keeping the high performance and pushing them into potential frameworks, etc. Long and short of it, the ratings, I think will stay, like even Simon said, in some form or the other, because you will, it's like the board exams, whether you have a grade or a score, there is something to refer to where a human being, when, he or she turns around and asks you, well, I did better or worse. You, even if you're saying you did better than what you were last year, you still are giving them some sort of benchmark to, cover themselves and see where they are. So the benchmarks will probably, as till human minds remain the way they are today, I think the benchmarks will always remain. So, well, ratings, as we see it, or as I see it, ratings will remain. What we can definitely do away with is these forced bell curves, where we definitely have to undermark someone and, mark someone very, very high. It should completely depend to me on the organization performance. If the organization's done brilliantly well, many people can go up on the curve, and the organization has done necessarily poor. There would be a significant chunk which would not make the cut as far as a high performance rating is concerned. So some such drift basis where the organization is. But I definitely feel that if we can do away with the performance dialogue and its connect with the compensation review, I think it will be the correct continuum to operate in. If we can, so I think that's where making it more quarterly and not so annual will also help. See, we cannot forget that when these talent review boards, or whatever you may be calling it, or people conversations happen in the organizations, there is an element of performance. There's an element of perception, as well as, what sort of view you have of the organization, what everyone around you thinks of it. You cannot do away with that relationship reality. Otherwise, interpersonal relationship would never have existed as a competence for any of the leaders, right? So if that competence exists, and there is somebody who scores better or worse in that will also have its own play in the entire rating game and, potential game. So that apart, which will impact the performance and the potential and, promotions, and will continue to do that, in my view. Making somebody effective at organizations should not be governed by that. The efficacy of an individual should be addressed in the way he or she really needs it to be addressed. So if I'm somebody who needs, like Sonal mentioned, won't that be micromanaging? Well, if somebody like me doesn't want a conversation every day and wants it once a week, well, my leader needs to understand that and give me that space. What something like OKR, and I'm really not wanting to make this a OKR marketing conference. So I'm saying something like OKR or any such agile goal format. What it is really doing is it is making people look at their tasks themselves and connecting it to the org goals, and not really pushing them into a conversation with the manager. That's not relevant. The technology itself throws in saying, this was your goal, this is where you're standing, if it's a numeric goal. If it's a non-numeric goal, you can always walk up and see, I had 10 tasks to do. What is my task adherence? 90%, which means I'm meeting my goal. So that's what a technology-based agile goal system would do for you. So what I'm trying to say is, if your goal and the feedback that the system is throwing at you, and I'm not meaning people conversations here, while I definitely encourage people conversations, on a daily basis between, manager and team member, what I'm saying is, it's not always about you doing bad or you doing good. It could be about, anything, any help that I can offer, any consultative conversation, depending on the employees. So a mix of everything, so I'm saying we should try and de-link this entire performance dialogue with that, compensation review conversation that we do. Sure. Well, if we can make compensation review itself a more agile system, and not, because of our logistical dependence, making it once a year, maybe even better. In fact, that's how probably many entrepreneurs survive. They never give everybody money the same day in the year. Yeah. They look at performance, they award performance, and they move forward. I mean, there are always pros and cons to every process, and something for us to really ponder.
And let's understand from Mayank, if there are these compensation systems also that he's implementing, which
yes,
giving us
yes. Actually, I didn't want to touch it.
Sorry, one moment, Mayank. At this point, I also wanted to sort of get our audiences to tell us what is it looking like in their organizations, and I'll have you respond just after that. Tell us if your organizations are using OKRs right now, and if your performance management system has ratings. While they do that, Mayank, yes, tell us, what is it looking like?
Well, so as I said, we do have to integrate with certain compensation management systems. Now, there's a good trick here, right? Whatever the system does, compensation management in India is still somebody takes an Excel download, right? Sets, okay, now let me put the ratings and the bell curve to it. Now I'll decide who will get what. And let's be fair. So conversations like this, and I want to tell people also while I'm on the conversations, that words like OKR and all this seems very fancy, but everyone in the country is somewhere in the juncture. How fast you are adapting to the what are the better versions is where it makes a difference, right? So even for compensation management, there are like some leading companies. There's one also in India. So become pay review is from India. So what we do, so what they have done is they have also evolved the systems. So compensations are no more a yearly thing now, right? So these systems have made it even technologically possible that, even with a, and at the end of it, I'll have to agree that ratings are still part of the play, but there are also qualitative elements to it, right? And but again, they again get evaluated. It's much like OKR. So people still think that it's like goal setting in India, in which the employer does the goal setting. You won't believe. I mean, outside the where we have implemented it, the goal settings, and we had to do a lot of development because the goal settings also are done. The OKRs are also set by the employees themselves, right? So you get evaluated on the targets, or rather the objectives you have set for yourself, which is a good way to look at it, right? But compensation managements and they are still on a rating scale, if you'll ask me, and still I would say 90% on the yearly base.
Yeah. So I mean, and that's what I'm looking at the poll as well. So while 44% are saying that they're using OKRs, 88% are still doing it in the ratings way. Now, of course, we've spoken about doing away with the whole ratings process, the bell curve, the forced distribution of performance, and then tying the rewards with that. Here are a few questions that are coming up, and there's one from Pavitra, and she's saying that we have a biannual performance cycle. There are these quarterly performance review conversations as well. So is there any a nugget of wisdom that you would like to share, Mayank, in terms of people, in terms of when, if let's say if people are sort of wanting to embark on that journey, and they want to sort of try out this new approach of managing performance, what's the best place to start? How do they
I think
really?
defining the goals. I can't emphasize the importance more to set up the objective goals. Like, of course, there are business goals, functional goals. I mean, everyone needs to set that up. And I wouldn't even shy away from saying that, if you're not able to get it, from the internal teams and you need an outside perspective, you should get it. I mean, there are consultants who help you define this, because there are many factors to it, right? You are envisaging that last year we grew by 20 and this next year we have to grow by 40%. So trainings and everything should be aligned like that. The industry is growing at 400%, right? So an outside perspective on how your growth should be as an organization, and then final dripping it down, because there are some departments like legal that people feel are very qualitative, like how to quantify it. So I think the first step would be to objectively define, key result areas for everyone.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So that's step one. Simin, now we've understood how we set goals, but if we go to step two now, and you spoke about managing performance, continuous performance evaluation, feedback, which is more in time, and then there is this whole quarterly check-in, and Adobe used to call it check-in as well, which was also, you can have weekly check-ins, you can have quarterly check-ins, but the guidance was that you should have a minimum of 4 conversations in a year. So 4 quarter conversations are important, for you to also do a fair assessment of your team members performance at the end of the year, if that's what you choose to do. So here Anita is asking, we have quarterly check-in, but still, what if an employee denies to accept the feedback and refuses to sign the form? Now, I just wanted to sort of get a sense from you, what do you think, how will you manage a situation like that?
So, this question is from whom, you said?
It's from Anita. She's
Okay.
asking, what do you do if the team member doesn't take
Yeah,
feedback?
yeah. So, Anita, typically something like this will happen if there is really no conversation happening before that one conversation. There is no indication normally of what the performance has been before that one conversation. And that's normally when the disconnect happens between a manager and a reportee, where, I feel I've done the best and my manager thinks I've done really nothing. But why should the manager or the person, actually me, wait only for that one review meeting before we can have this conversation? So ideally, Sonal and I have been saying about continual feedback is this: that, okay, on a continuous basis, you may not need it on a daily basis, but continuous basis you must tell, if you are a manager, about your reportee, what is it that he or she is doing right or wrong, both ways, so that they are able to correct it midway, rather than waiting for that. HR has forced that there will be 4 discussions in a year, so I'm going to tell that person only during that discussion because HR has mandated कि ये तो होना है, like that. So ultimately, I agree there will still be a number of people who may not really accept what you are saying, but then you have to cite it with some examples, cite it with some data. Even a performance discussion without the backing of any data is meaningless. You're not talking about perceptions, you're talking about actual outcomes. So if there is a lack of outcome, you have the data to say that, listen, this is what we expected you to do. Also, something like this happens when you do not set the goals clearly and objectively at the beginning, so that the person is really not aware as to what they're required to be doing at the end of the year, and what is it that they will be evaluated on. So if all of that is done objectively, you have your goal setting initially in the beginning of the year clearly, and these goals are again need to be agile, because with the different, the different scenario in the business, quarterly they may be changing, or depending on, somebody wrote it's a biannual practice, so all right, you may be changing or modifying the goals halfway through, but that's all right, as long as you're clear about that, as long as you know and set your expectations correctly, in 99% of the cases you will not have this issue.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, absolutely. And Sonal, I wanted to bring up this point of, really equipping our managers well, right? And, this whole new philosophy that we're talking about, which is actually not so new anymore, but for the companies who may want to be, taking on this journey, from my experience, what I've learned is that managers play a very crucial role, right? And when you are, introducing something like this, what is it that you can do to help your managers understand this process, and like Simon was mentioning, how do you set these goals and how do you have these conversations effectively that you don't run into these bottlenecks, as Aman's also mentioning. We confront bottlenecks where feedback mechanism is not very agile, is not very efficient, because there's this whole element of culture and bias, and how you as a as a manager really work with your team, right? And you are really you're playing a significant role in driving performance and inspiring it, so to say. So what do you think, as last words before we end the conversation today? What do we really have to do
Yeah.
get this
So
right?
at the cost of sounding patronizing, I will still say this: we need to probably stop looking at PMS as a process, and we have to adopt it as a culture. The moment performance management bringing efficacy, in fact, our key role should become getting the people to be able to give the best to the organization. So in fact, this entire piece will become a part of the employee experience. And PMS will then become a part of a larger system called culture. Right now, the issue why feedback, or somebody has to tell the manager what to do, etc., is because a PMS is an HR process which the other functions have to do as a favor to HR. Moment that changes to saying, okay, feedback is something that I need to either ask and demand or give an offer, will when it becomes a part of the normal working mechanism. For example, when we as the facilitators of the process, insist for certain weekly meetings, or say 3 meetings every week for between a manager and team member, we are not saying that you take them out on coffee and only speak about, did you watch the match, or did you, did that ad really excite you? What we're saying is talk about what's happening in the organization, talk about the role that the person is playing in the organization, talk about family, talk about experience, talk about the manager's role is above and beyond picking challenges, in what's happening and what's not happening. Incidentally, the entire fear that I read in the chats about this entire word feedback is that feedback is predicted to be what went wrong, while feedback is only, this is what you did, this is how I perceived it as a leader, or this is how the leader next door perceived your work as, or our effort as a team as. The moment we transition to say conversations and dialogues, are what is the bedrock of a performing organization, I think we will start a very different journey. So what leader will have to then do is leader will have to become, like I was mentioning in one of the comments, leader will have to take the position basis the team member. Leader will have to coach, instruct, guide, mentor, or just be a sounding board depending on who's sitting in front of him or her.
Yeah.
And I think that's what to me is the essence of being a leader in a performance centric organization, which is a culture and not a process.
Absolutely. Wonderfully said, Sonal. And at this point, I want to, tap into the collective wisdom of this group. There are a lot of participants here with us, and they're all representing different organizations. Some of them may have already, implemented a lot of these processes. And if you could tell us, what are your top ideas for managing and inspiring performance in this new world of work? I'm sure we can learn from each other. And while you do that, Mayank, what have been your key learnings? What is it that we can do to really bring about this culture change, as Sonal just spoke of?
One point that I think Sonal very well captured was that rather than just a qualitative feedback to a more constructive, to a mentorship role, I think that is something that only I personally believe that agile systems can work on, right? So you are in a PIP at the end of the year. I think that has completely lost the purpose, right? Continuous feedback helps you, right? If this is not working out, let me try out this, right? And for startups, it's very much easy. And this is just to answer the question: is that for us, as rewards are very agile, so are working on things that are not working out, right? So we can realign our priorities, feedback systems. And one thing I also want to put across is, and this might be very qualitative to some of you, but my learning working in the space is that a lot of the people, because they have a qualitative feedback system, do not give feedbacks. They pass on judgments, right? ये तुमसे नहीं हो पाएगा. This is not good. When you have an objective system, you would say that, for a role like this, and this comes from my empirical evidence across the cross, that, for this 20 was the sales number you should be doing, or rather says you should have undertaken 20 trainings, right? Then you are actually giving a feedback that for this role, this is the objectively defined quantifiable output, that this is what this, for this, to ensure you have to work on your communications and many things. But if you don't have a written objective, the problem is everyone will take it personal. Everyone is saying, yeah, he's saying my English is not good. And then what do you do with that, right? So I personally believe, as I said, my 90% of the focus when I implement, and though we are a tech company, we actually help companies define those, right? Which is not even like, I don't know, if I was in a job, I would say that this is not even my JD, right? But I sit with companies to help them work with that, because it eventually helps my system. So the success of a performance management system is if people are actually feeling, as Sonal said, that it should be more of a lifestyle, in their work lifestyle, as a culture thing, rather than one in a time, a technology push that they have to work on, that, now I've got a pop-up, I have to submit this. They should see this, that if I'm working on this on day-to-day basis, I'm also knowing that what I'm growing it. So last year I used to do 20 demos. Today I'm sitting at every month of 30 demos, and enterprise customer acquiring is like good. So I worked on my English. There's a certain journey that you undertake while you're with an organization, and this helps you do that. So that was one. Yeah, I mean, that's good enough. I can go on with my rant, because there are a lot of learnings, when you implement a system with diverse groups, manufacturing, IT, there are a lot of learnings.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and there are quite.
I would just like to just add one little thing, in this whole conversation. You see, sometimes it also helps in helping out people to actually understand what we mean by feedback. We take certain things for granted. Like when we say that, give a fair feedback or give continuous feedback, we are assuming that everybody knows how to do it.
Yeah.
So in my organization, what we did is, in HR, we kind of ensured that we actually went out and gave trainings to people. What is the right mechanism of giving feedback? What is wrong, actually? How you should not give a feedback, and how you should, and what is it that actually constitutes the right mechanism? So that also sort of helps. Then this, what Mayank was saying, sometimes it is more of a okay, tu to ye kar hi nahi sakta kind of a discussion will not happen. So yeah.
No, absolutely. And I think, we have people who are also responding and telling us, what could be those things and how we can sort of learn from each other as well in terms of what we've already tried in our organizations and has worked. So this will come your way in a thank you mailer very soon. So do keep responding if you are still in the middle of sharing this with us. The screen is on. You can continue to do that. I'm not sharing it here, but we are almost at the end of our time with you today. So thank you so much for participating. We will keep bringing you these interesting conversations. Remember, this is a year-long engagement, and we have 3 seasons to go. Hybrid Workplace 2025. Thank you, Sonal. Thank you, Simin and Mayank, for sharing all of those insights with us, and all of you who participated. Well, these conversations come alive with those great insights and comments and your participation. So thank you once again. Before we let you go, do give us a little feedback. Tell us how do you like these sessions, whether it was a useful investment of your time, if you would recommend this session to others, if you'd like to come again for another one soon. So tell us about that. And once again, thank you so much. All the panelists, we will have you for another discussion very soon. Rest of you who made time to be part of this discussion today, thank you once again. Have a lovely rest of the evening, and we will see you soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you.